I often talk about in life, you don't want to get caught up in recency bias. But in sports betting, it's very important to understand you're always going to try to confirmation bias, what you previously thought. Or just kind of always confirm your biases, right? And recency bias is something that bettors need to avoid, like really need to avoid, especially when you're talking about a series like this with the Heat. So here's a little exercise. Let's bring the three of us up because, fellas, I actually think this will fascinate you guys. So, again, we know the Heat right now are 14-7 in the postseason ATS. That's the best record in all of, obviously, the postseason amongst everybody who's contributed. 15-point win on Wednesday. But how about this? We'll go back to April 16th, game 1 in Milwaukee. Now, think about what I just said there. April 16th is when the postseason started. It's June 9th. Think about the slog. Think about what these teams are dealing with. But let's go here. Milwaukee, April 16th, game 1. The Heat were catching 9. The Heat won by 13. Okay, we head back to Miami in that Milwaukee series, tied up at 1-1. Miami hosting Milwaukee in game 3. The Bucks, Amal Shah, were laying 2. The Heat won by 22 points. I think you're going to see a theme here with the Heat being dogs. So we head back to Milwaukee, of course, with the Heat up 3-1, a chance to close out Milwaukee in game 5. Do you two want to take a guess what Milwaukee was laying hosting the Heat in game 5 in a closeout game to begin the playoffs?
11.5.
Dustin?
Oh, I was going to go like 7.5.
The Bucks were laying 13.
Wow.
And the Heat won by 2 and closed out Milwaukee. Okay? Now, I know that's crazy. Now, we know the Heat went on to beat the Knicks in 6. I'll skip them because, no offense, Dustin, it's the Knicks. Let's go to the conference finals against the Celtics. Most believe the Celtics obviously would roll over the Heat. This idiot that you're listening to, one of them. Let's talk about game 1, May 17th. The Boston Celtics were favored by 8.5. The Heat won by 7. Game 2, the Boston Celtics were favored by, fellas, you want to take a guess?
Game 2, you said?
Yep, game 2 at Boston.
9.5. 9 or 9.5.
Okay,
That feels right.
Dustin?
9.5 does feel right.
You guys nailed it. It's 9.5. The Heat won by 7 points. So we head back to, now this is, I think this will really illustrate the example. We head back, the Heat up 2-0, just won 2 in Boston. We head back to Miami for game 3. And what was the spread, fellas? Could take a shot.
Boston 1.5.
Dustin?
Yeah, Boston 2.5 maybe.
Boston 4.5.
Man.
Guess what? The Heat won by 26. Now, you're laughing. What happened next? Boston won 3 straight.
Yep.
Remember? Doesn't this feel like it was a year ago, by the way?
Yes, it does.
So
yes, it does.
It's crazy. You got to give these guys credit. It's a 2-month slog after 5 months of playing in the regular season. So now we head back to Boston for game 7, tied up at 3s. Now, obviously, Boston was favored in the game. You want to take a stab, fellas?
7.5 going to 8.5.
It was big. Yeah, I think 7.5 was the number.
Amal, you nailed it. Dustin, you nailed it. 7.5, Boston favored. And it was a close game. The Heat won by 19. And they closed out the Boston Celtics. So what am I trying to say here? Well, let's move on to the finals. So the Heat lost game 1 in Denver. No surprise. A terrible spot. Remember, they were traveling from Boston to Denver. The Nuggets were rested 10 days. Amal Shah, game 1, do you remember the spread?
9.5, I think.
Dustin?
Yeah, it was like 9.5, 8.5.
They closed 9, and Denver won by 21. So the odds makers were onto something here. So then game 2, remember, the Heat won. What did it close as far as the spread, fellas?
8 or 8.5.
I thought it was like 7.5, but yeah, close enough.
Okay. The Denver Nuggets were favored by 8.
Yeah.
Some books 8.5, and the Heat won by 3. So again, that's a long experiment, but I think it's important sometimes to condition ourselves. Like, again, confirmation bias. I am so susceptible to what I just saw, and I think a lot of us as human beings are. And we just saw the Heat then, after winning in Denver, where Denver hadn't lost since the Truman administration, they head back to Miami, and they get blown out. And they lose, 15 points. Now game 3, we're all just like, what's happening here? The Nuggets hit 5 threes. The Nuggets did everything right. This is a game where the Nuggets dominated physically, Amal. 58-33 on the boards. They dominated physically in the paint. 60-34 as far as the point differential for the Nuggets. The Heat couldn't hit a shot. It's a 15-point win. You turn around, and again, we got the same point spread. The Heat are catching 3.5, and the total is 2-11. I said a lot of words, so I apologize. Amal, what do we take from this little experiment?
No, first of all, the Miami Heat can never be counted out, and I'm glad you brought up Game 5 in Milwaukee. I thought, not because the spread being 13, I thought that was the best win of this postseason by any team. I did not expect them to go on Milwaukee's home floor and close them out in a 3-1 situation going into that game. The Game 7 win in Boston was a bit of an anomaly for me, but still give them a ton of credit. You thought they had a chance there. I think, number one, you mentioned when we started this segment, Heat culture. Can't discount them. Jimmy Butler has played well in the fourth quarter when they've needed him most. Guys have stepped up, whether it's Vincent, Caleb Martin, Max Strus, whomever it may be. They need someone to step up and deliver. But I don't know where you guys come out on this game. I remember both of you made great bets immediately as the line came out on Denver in game number 3. Easy winner there for you. I don't feel like this is the same scenario for the Nuggets. However, as I said to you guys when we were in commercial the other day, could either of you back Miami? And all three of us universally said no. I still can't bet Miami tonight.
Listen, I'm not disagreeing with you. Dustin, you posed the question in your notes a few nights ago. What's the next documentary that should be made? They're making the documentary about Florida 06 to 09. I just told you, as Amal just mentioned, at Milwaukee, they were 13-point dogs. They win. At Boston, they were 7.5-point dogs. They won by 19. Like, this is a historic run by the Heat right now. They're an 8 seed. Dustin, so after the little experiment, what did you learn?
I think the biggest thing for the Heat is trying to make sense of them like they're a conventional basketball team, because they're not. Every game is totally in a vacuum for them, and their style and their approach and their mentality is completely unique only to them. And I think in this spot, this is very familiar for them, as you pointed out. It was a great research, because this is bigger than an elimination game for them. They know they need this more right now to keep things going and not to lose momentum. I think they're very good at knowing what's on the line each game. They're very good at compartmentalizing things, and they're focused on this game and this game only. And I think that's what makes them unique, is like they're not going to ride the wave and listen to the noise. They're simply focused on getting the job done, and they don't care how it looks, how it feels, as long as at the end of the game they have more points than the other team. And we're just not used to that from a lot of these teams, because lately the NBA has been a style points league.
Having said all that, we all agree, right? The Nuggets roll tonight.
I don't know if they roll. I think
I'm totally being facetious.
No, I know you are.
But my instinct, it's weird though. My instinct wants to say what I just said, but I just proved that we can't go there, right?
No, you're absolutely right. And I love the argument you gave in favor of the Miami Heat. But look, I think I was telling Dustin, I was so mad, and I told you the next day, I was so mad I didn't bet Denver. I thought it was such a good spot for them. To me, tonight is not the same situation for the Nuggets as it was in game number 3. I still believe they win the game tonight, but this feels like somewhere between 2 to 6 points. I don't know which side it's going to come out on. I think the difference in these series, Denver is a far superior team than Milwaukee. Giannis is great. Giannis is better than anybody that the Miami Heat can throw at him. But I think Jimmy Butler is the second best player on the floor there. I can make the argument Jimmy Butler is the best player on the floor against Boston, even though Tatum's a great player. In this one, I go, wow, the Joker, with Jamal Murray being the complementary piece that is needed for this Denver Nuggets team. That combo supersedes anything they've faced all postseason.
By the way, speaking of Butler, a little more research here. In game 4s, because this is the exact spot for the Heat. Remember, 8 seed, they've been at home for all game 4s. What has Butler done in game 4s in the postseason? Oh, against the Bucks, 56 points and a win. Against the Knicks, 27 points and a win. Against the Celtics, 29 points and a loss. However, what I'm telling you is Butler shows up. His scoring prop tonight is 26.5. All game 4 so far, he's gone over with aplomb.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.